Hey everyone, I'm Natasha and thanks so much for joining me. Today I'll be showing you how to make a cute and simple watercolor pineapple postcard on these watercolor postcard sheets. And the pineapple will be similar to them, not identical to these right here. I'm going more for this sort of color scheme, but you can choose whatever colors you'd like. Now you obviously don't have to use the postcards, but they are easy to find, inexpensive, and I find that the small size is unintimidating if you're new to watercolor. So to do this project, at bare minimum, you're going to need a yellow. I have my Daniel Smith New Gamboge. It's a nice warm yellow. You're also going to need a pink. I'm using Winsor & Newton Permanent Rose. And then for the leaves, of course, you'll need a green. This is my favorite green, Daniel Smith Phthalo Green Blue shade. And then I'm going to use the yellow on the leaves as well. And then to add some interest and shadows, I'm using a purple, my Holbein Mineral Violet. And on the leaves, a blue. I'm using the Daler-Rowney Transparent Turquoise because I like it and I think it's a very tropical color. Now, these are artist quality paints. You don't have to use these colors, you don't have to use these paints. You can obviously use any watercolor paints that you have on hand, so don't stress too much about these. One big difference between your artist quality paints and say student grade paints is the degree of pigmentation. So it might just be a little bit less vibrant or a little bit less light fast. So just don't hang it out in the sun and mix up your paint so it's nice and thick, nice and pigmented, and then you'll get a bit more vibrant results if you're not using an artist quality paint. You're also going to need paintbrushes, something sort of mid-sized. I love using my 8. I also have a 6 for the leaves, a pencil to draw your pineapple, and then some kind of paint pen. I'm using a Posca ultrafine white paint pen. You can also use a Sharpie, something like that. That's how we'll be doing the cross-hatching on the pineapple so that you don't have to worry with any masking fluid. Now I've already drawn my pineapple. It's really simple. You just do basically an oval and you can refine it a little bit into more of an egg kind of shape if you want, and then something spiky up on top for the foliage. It can be like a troll doll hair. It doesn't have to be just like this, not by any means. Now, of course, you're also going to need your water. I have a big 2.5 quart container of water off to the side and some paper towels to dab your brush on. A mistake that a lot of people make is not using a big enough water container. Don't use a tiny glass. Your colors are going to get really muddy, especially since you're working with complements. So complementary colors are opposite one another on the color wheel. So purple and yellow are complements. That means they look really nice next to each other. But if you let them mix together, they're going to get very dull, very muddy, grayed out, and not very attractive. So if you have a small water container and you're using complements, it's very easy for your paints on your page to get really muddy and unattractive. So make sure to use a nice big water container. Now I've already mixed up my paints some, but they've dried out a little bit, so I'm going to get them nice and juicy, wet but highly pigmented, and I advise that you go ahead and do the same with your purple, pink, and yellow. You can leave the green and the blue because we'll be doing the foliage later. So I'm going to get these mixed up better again and meet you right back here in a second. Okay, so to start with, we're going to wet the pineapple just a little bit, not too much, just enough to make sure that our paints aren't going to dry out before we're ready to mix them. My brush isn't quite as clean as it should be. Dab that off. Make sure your brush is good and clean and that your water is good and clean. Okay, let's try this again. So brush on just a bit of water. And it can really help if you pick up your paper and look at it from an angle, and you can really see where the sheen is when you do this. And you can make sure there's not any dry spots because that will make things look kind of funky because your paint's going to flow around that dry spot and look kind of weird. So don't be afraid to pick up your watercolor painting and move it around. So when we get started, I'm going to work fairly quickly. What I'm going to do is come in with my purple across the bottom because it's sort of my shadow color, right? So I'm going to come in the bottom here, then I'm going to grab pink, bring it down into the purple, clean my brush, wipe the excess moisture off, grab yellow, bring it down in, letting the purple and the pink mix, and the yellow and the pink mix, but not, or trying not to allow the purple and the yellow to mix. So I'm going to get my brush wet, dab off some moisture so that I don't flood out this paint here, water it down, dab that excess off, and then come on in and paint on some purple. Maybe add a little bit more vibrant there. I like to dab the excess off, just a little bit off the tip there, or else all that extra moisture can really do funny things with the other paint that's on the paper. It can create these blossoms that some people in modern watercolors enjoy doing, but my first teacher was really traditional, and she got really upset about blossoms, so kind of stuck with me. So I get that extra moisture off, come in, work my way down into the purple, and you can always come in and layer a little bit back on top too if they're not mixing quite as much as you'd like, and try to more drop it in to encourage that pigment to come off the brush. I'm going to drop a little bit more pink in here. I want it nice and vibrant. Bringing it out to those edges. Okay, I like to wipe my brush off and then take it into my water because it helps keeps my water cleaner for longer. Now the yellow is a pretty powerful color, so you don't need a whole lot of it to start with. Then bringing it down into that pink. Again, you can layer more on top. You can drop some more in because the pink and the yellow mix to make a really fun orange color. I got a little dab there on my paper. I'm just going to take some paper towel, lift that up nice and easy. Yeah, the pink and the orange make a really great, sorry, the pink and the yellow make a really great pineapple-y looking orange there. That is a lot of fun. So you can see this is a very whimsical pineapple. I love watercolor because it really lends itself to that whimsy. It kind of has a mind of its own. It goes where it wants to, and it just makes it really fun and really great for these just sort of fun tropical designs, to be repetitive with the word fun there. Okay, so there we have it. We're going to let that dry and then come back in and do the foliage. Now you can let it dry naturally. You can bring out a hair dryer and let it dry. It's really up to you, but it should only take a couple minutes if you want to let it sit. So I'll meet you back here when it's dry. So this isn't 100% dry yet, but it doesn't need to be. I just didn't want it to run when I was picking it up to add water into my leaves here. If you ever want to see if your watercolor is dry, touch it lightly with the back of your hand. If it feels cool, then it's still wet. And touching it with the back of your hand is better because the back of your hand doesn't have all the oils the front of your hand does, so it's not going to mess up your painting. So I know that this isn't 100% dry. Like I said, that's okay. I just didn't want the colors to mix and run. I have my puddles of green, blue paint, and yellow mixed up here to do the leaves. So just like before, I'm going to very lightly wet the leaves one at a time. I'm going to come in with green, mostly green and yellow. Yellow on the tops and the tips, like the sun is coming and hitting this pineapple, with a little bit of blue, particularly for the shadows. And I'm really just going to drop little dabs of blue in on top just to add that little bit of interest. You can go with just the green and the yellow if you'd like. So I'm going to wet one of my leaves, making sure I come out to the edges. And like I said, it's a really good and easy thing to do. Just pick up your paper and look at it. See if there's a sheen everywhere, and if so, then you've coated the whole thing with water. I got a little extra water, dab it off. Okay, so I wet my brush, dab off the extra water. I'm gonna come in, get some green, get off the excess paint. I don't want this getting too super duper wet because it's not taped down. And these postcards are not the world's best paper, so they definitely do like to try to buckle up a bit. Grab a little bit of my blue, drop it in there as a nice shadow color. This turquoise is a really lovely tropical color that's great for pineapples and other tropical scenes. And then grab my yellow, bringing it from the tip down into that green. All right, and there is the first leaf. We can go ahead and do another one if we want, or you can let it dry if you want to pick up your paper and you're afraid of your colors running. I'm going to turn my page and go to the next one, lightly wetting it. I said this paper doesn't take a whole lot of water the way some other papers will. I'm going to add my green first just because it's what I'm doing. Saving some space for blue and for yellow. Clean my brush, wipe off extra moisture, and I always dab off that extra little ball there, or else I'm going to get a blossom and there's going to be a whole lot of water and a whole lot of pigment that really does funky things to that green. Clean my brush off, same thing, come into the yellow. With the yellow, I do like to start out at the point and then work my way into the green. That ensures that I get a nice pure yellow at the end, and then that beautiful mixing and mingling that watercolor likes to do down at the base. All right, moving on. Same thing on this next leaf here. Okay, grabbing my green. A little bit of blue. Now when adding this color, sort of drop it in like that, because when you swipe, it tends to not leave as much color and actually lift some of the color. And you can come back in with a lightly moist brush too. Like here, I clearly kind of missed getting water all the way to the edges. So you can come and just pull that color out like that. My brush, get my yellow. Same thing, working from the tip in and pulling it down in. Just like that. And last two. Up here I'm going to try to do less green, more yellow, because if we're thinking of this yellow as really being highlights from the sun, then it's not going to be as shadowed up here, right? It's going to be more shadowed down here in the lower leaves, with far less shadow and more highlight as we make our way to the top. I ended up with a lot of green anyway, but hey. There we go. This top one, I'm going to try to make the least shadowy of all and the most highlighted. So to help me achieve that, I'm going to do my yellow first. So I make sure to get a whole lot of yellow in there, and then come back and drop a little bit of green in. Help pull it to the edges. And then just a little bit of blue There we go. And that also, because of the application of the paint and a little bit of extra water, it's going to be the lightest colored as well, not just having the most yellow, but also the lightest colored, because I intentionally let my pigment get a little bit watered down. Now, before we add the cross-hatching in, it is very important to make sure that this pineapple is completely dry, and you are probably going to want to pick it up, so just go ahead and let those leaves dry too. And then when it's completely dry, not cool to the touch with the back of the hand, then you can come in and add your cross-hatching. After your whole painting is completely dry and you've tested it with the back of your hand to ensure that it is, you just come in with your paint marker, whether that's a Posca pen like this, a Sharpie, and do your cross-hatching. I had to do it off camera because I just can't do it on my filming setup. It's a little bit precarious. So you just add your cross-hatching in, some parallel lines, and that's it. You're basically finished. Now, if you do want to mail this as a postcard, obviously, if the mail gets rained on, which totally does happen, then it would make your watercolors run. So, one, you might want to use an envelope. And two, you might want to seal it with something like this, a kryolan matte finish. It's really helpful because it resists moisture and it also helps protect your painting from fading out in the sun, which can be particularly important if you're not using light fast artist grade paints. So it can really help protect your painting. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial on how to make this fun, easy watercolor pineapple. If there's other watercolors that you would like to see, other painting ideas that you would like to see tutorials for in the future, please leave a comment down below, whether you're here on YouTube or on my blog. And if you found this video through YouTube and not my blog, please make sure to stop by the accompanying blog post linked in the description below, because this is also a blog post tutorial. And you can visit my blog, The Artisan Life, at www.natashalh.com. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you soon for another tutorial.